Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, which is called A View from Behind the Code. Admittedly, it has been taken from Test Match Special, from A View from Behind the Boundary, so we must give a shout out to them. But the whole point of these webinars, I think we're going to start setting these up to be quite regular. The aim is to bring in, obviously, James from our side at Toca.io, and we're bringing in Aaron Greenhalgh from Slater Gordon, and we're going to discuss all things coding, new techniques, new systems, anything out there, and just discussing how they're and when they're going to be implemented in the workplace, and actually really get an understanding of what people are looking for and understand whether these things are going to make a difference or whether it's just hype. So that's the sort of tip that we're going on here. So talking about obviously newish trends, we're going to be talking and discussing low code today. So today, Aaron is head of development at Slater Gordon. We have James, who is our CTO at Toca.io. We're going to be discussing and sort of understanding Aaron's journey in his career, but then also looking at how that journey reflected or his view of low code, no code, low code, changed throughout that career, and actually sort of explore where we think it works best, what's the best opportunities for low code, and throw some challenges out there. We will have as well 5-10 minutes at the end for questions. So if you do have a question, please pop it in. What I think I will try and do, if I can, is I will give the person who added the question the opportunity to actually speak and pass that question over. But please bear in mind, we want to get as many done as possible. So, Aaron, if you could just give an introduction to yourself, where your career started, how it went through first, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So a bit about me. So my background is in computer science. I've also got a master's degree in cybersecurity, albeit recently. My career has predominantly been in the legal industry. Now, I actually started off as a software developer, so building legal tech solutions, managing B2B integrations and B2C integrations, more so in the personal injury and class action market space. So as Keith pointed out, my current held position is head of software development. So what that consists of is I manage a couple of cross-functional product teams, and I work on delivering new features and just general support for our practice management products, as well as also client-facing products for things like self-service retention. It's probably been in the past 2 years where I've had the most exposure to the low-code technologies, but also probably been in the last 2 years where I've really stepped into the legal tech kind of community. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you both.
So obviously I'll pick up on that, and I'll sort of, I suppose, start on our journey that we took with Slater Gordon. It's probably about 2 years, year and a half now, can't remember, must be about that, where we started talking to Simon. I remember the very first conversation I had with Simon, he gave me a right grilling, which I didn't have a lot of the answers to the question for. But we then went through a process with yourselves, and I think Fraser, who was with you at the time, took on the sort of review of Toca. And then I think Fraser left, and it sort of came and hit and landed in your lap, didn't it? Almost a little bit. That's how I felt it came in. You can let me know if that's slightly different. But it'd be interesting to understand, obviously, from that point of when Toca landed in your lap, a low-code platform, what your thoughts were then and what they are now, since, because your career has changed over that period of time as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that my opinion of low-code at the time, I didn't have an overall opinion, to be completely honest. Like I said, this was 2 years ago, and referencing what I mentioned in my introduction, it was only around 2 years ago where I really started to get my foot in the door with low-code technology. At the time, I think I was a senior developer or a technical lead at the time, and my first thoughts were I was quite skeptical of the whole idea. Being a developer, one of the biggest challenges I think you've got from selling a low-code concept is developers by nature like to build things. They like a blank canvas. And when you give them an application or a product or a configurable platform, let's say, it kind of, at first it came across like, oh, you're going to take the joy, let's say, out of starting something from scratch.
So that was your first thought. Now,
Yes.
obviously, we had a number of things that we built, but one of the things we did build quite quickly was that onboarding app for employment law, etc. So leave that there. How, though, over time, now you're moving into your role where you are now, how have you found or viewed low-code systems in that sort of space, and where do you see the benefits starting to fit in from your side?
Yeah, so I think the opinion is somewhat split with me between the developer in me, but also the manager in me as well. Because you've got your business advantages and disadvantages of low code, but you've also got it from a development point of view as well. So from a developer point of view, I've just told you my concerns, but from a manager point of view, that's kind of got, and like a business led point of view, you've got a separate kind of opinion as to what a developer would have. So for example, from a kind of product delivery perspective, you've got faster application development, which is fantastic, both from a management point of view, obviously, but also a developer point of view, because what developers love to do is see your ideas come to life. And if your time to market is reduced, then you see your vision in real time being used in the market, which is always a nice thing to have. From a business-led kind of delivery point of view, not only is your kind of go-to-market lead time reduced, but there's also a concept or a phrase called time to fail, which is kind of the other side of that coin, which is equally as important and it's sometimes often overlooked, because a lot of times you may not be sure if the specific solution is right, or you might go to market and consumer behavior isn't what you anticipated it to be. And this is why time to fail is so important, because that means you haven't wasted months of internal development effort and costs on a wasted product, essentially, that doesn't meet your business needs. I think some other benefits that have really kind of shone to me over the past probably 6 to 12 months at least anyway is the agility as well of the low-code platform. So out of the box with a lot of vendors, you've got API connectors, so it allows you to integrate with a lot of on-premise stuff. I know a lot of law firms especially, and the older the firm has, the more you could argue has more technical depth behind it. And having those kind of API connectors and having a more agile product really helps you to overcome those challenges.
So from your side then,
yeah,
obviously you've built a low-code system.
Yeah.
Obviously being a hardcore developer as well, what's your feeling about it? Because you're obviously split in a slightly different way.
I also very split. So the I very much echo Aaron's sentiment that as a developer, it's you want to build stuff. And that's your kind of first thought. You see a code, a low-code platform. You feel it doesn't give you the flexibility that you would have as a developer. But actually, what we've started to realize over the years is as our product's been developed and it's grown, we've actually started to identify areas where low-code has been a massive help to us in terms of software development. So as an example of this, our own website, Toca.io, was built on our low-code platform. Now, we could have, paid for some digital agency to build it. We could have got our own web developers in-house to build our corporate website. But I would much rather that they're focusing on building the product that we sell and we deliver than spending weeks or months even building our consumer website. So we actually gave that to some of our solutions consultants, and they're just grads. They've got backgrounds in some have got backgrounds in computer science, some have just got kind of STEM backgrounds, you know, they've done physics or maths or something, but they've been able to pick up the tool, you know, this low code platform with such efficiency and speed that, you know, we've been able to hand over the task of, you know, build our front facing, our corporate website, and they've done an absolutely brilliant job of it, and they don't really have any web developer experience, you know. And at the same time, whilst they've been building that, our actual web developers have been continuing to drive our product development. And it's the same with many other things. So we use Toca ourselves for not only our website, but also our community, so our online learning platform. We also use it for server monitoring and kind of resource monitoring. Obviously, we've got quite a big cloud infrastructure that we monitor with it. And then also, it's now our deployment. We've built a deployment application that can deploy Toca to servers. So we've got Toca deploying Toca. And all of these tasks we could have given to our developers, but they would have spent weeks, months, potentially, you know, we could have lost years to building these tools, when actually we could just give them to our solutions consultants between projects, and they've been able to deliver something which is as high quality as a developer could do, just with less skills. So it's really about, for me, the benefit of a low code platform and having one at our fingertips is not to replace the developers, but it's actually so that our developers are focusing on work that matters and engages their skills to the best possible efficiency, and we can give the slightly less technical stuff, you know, to our consultants.
So
okay, so but go on, Aaron.
So it seems like you've really adopted Toca internally as well, as your core platform. But so a question to you, James, if I may, is how are you going to expand that community outside of the business?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one, and actually it's something we've probably only really started to get into the groove of in the last few months. But so with our platform, we've got this development kit, and that allows people to build their own stuff. And we quickly realized that actually, you know, there's a potential for a big community, or almost kind of academy-like following of Toca. You know, you get it with other similar products. And if actually there's a company that's building connectors, API connectors into a case management system, it'd be amazing if they could then push that somewhere and share it with everyone else. And so with that in mind, we've started to push out this idea of a marketplace where people can actually build stuff on Toca. They can then push it out, and then other people can pull it down. You know, we're still very much in kind of early stages of this, but the potential of that is massive, because not only are you building this community, but everyone benefits from that. Because, you know, if I've built something that I think is going to be useful for other people, then we can start to build this rich ecosystem of stuff out there. So all the projects that we've built internally, you know, once we've finalized marketplace, which should be in the next couple of months, then there's no reason we can't share those projects for Slater and Gordon, so Aaron's team, to pull down and start using. So that's kind of how we see it growing.
But you asked me a question about something, Aaron, which is around GitHub and something.
Oh yes, I mean, I can carry on the conversation with James about this, because I'm just about to go into it. So you mentioned a marketplace, which I think is a phenomenal idea, because it really builds that community for your product. One of the main things you know, a development team look for, or any business will look for, is that aspect of community and supportability. So that marketplace that you just discussed, then, is that something that you consider making open source? Because if you look at even like the big blue chip firms, they've got like their own GitHub repository, for example, and they use that for collaboration with users to build that sense of community.
Absolutely.
And that engagement with your customers, I think that'd be a real positive thing to do.
Yeah, that's certainly where we'd like to strive to get to. You know, we're still very much in the kind of early days of this, but for example, our documentation is on our public facing GitHub, and we've actually had a few people do pull requests. So they've identified that something's out of date, or they've identified that they would like to add more information to a section, and they've just dropped in a pull request, and we've been able to review, you know, their proposed change and pull it in. And then that's immediately, you know, available on our documentation site. So that's definitely the direction we would like to go. And another good example of that is, if you're a developer and you have a problem with, you know, you run into an issue, first place you go is Stack Overflow for an answer. You know, it's like a running joke almost in you know, if Stack Overflow is down, then no one can do any work. So it's being able to leverage, you know, these common places like that. So what we can start to do is populate Stack Overflow with frequently asked questions and stuff, so that if people do have an issue with Toca, they just go to the same place they would for any other development project.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things I picked up on there. One is obviously speed. You've talked about speed in a slightly different way in which we've talked about speed. But obviously speed from your point of view is actually it allows you to get through, if you look at the whole development life cycle, low code actually allows you to get through to a number of the early stages without having massive cost and risk. But you've also talked about speed in terms of actually it allows you to have, well, your junior developers probably doing more.
Yeah, more high profile
work,
more serious work. Yeah.
So one of the obviously business cases that is often put across with low code, one of the things I want to sort of explore is, and I want to explore sort of developers' attitude towards this as well. So
okay,
is I'm often, because I'm in sales, pulled in by partners, or I'm pulled in by senior leadership team to talk about, you know, how can we get things done quicker? Can you solve my problems? One of the, and I'll give an example, one of the barriers I've sort of hit often is we get so far with the business case, we understand the business case, then we hit the developer team go, yeah, but we can do that. And you go, okay, how do you do that? Well, we've got this template we've already coded, and it's coded template. And we go, okay, great. Sales cycle dies off. And then probably 8 weeks later, maybe 6 months later, we get another phone call from the same partners going, look, we still haven't got this done. We still haven't got things done. We still haven't got things moved. So how do you see, in terms from a developer point of view, that if you have tools like those templates before, how do we change the mindset of developers that actually something like a low code configurable platform is more beneficial than using templates that are high code?
Yeah. So one of the principles that developers go by, one of the coding standards, is solid principles. And one thing that you don't want to do as a developer is recreate things, essentially. Okay.
Right.
With low code tools, if you set the seed, then you can build on it. I think I've been in that situation many times where I've been like, well, I can build this. I compared it to an off-the-shelf product. Well, we can build that. Well, you know, developers, we can build anything at the end of the day, given the amount of resource and time given to us. But that's not always. I think there's sometimes a barrier between actual development and management as well. And it's for that management layer to actually translate the developers' expectations, or the business expectations, to the developers.
Yeah.
Because the developers can say, yeah, we can build it, but actually, yeah, you can build it, but it's going to take 6 to 12 months. And because of, you know, market needs, and because of the way that business is heading, we need it in the next 4 weeks. And that doesn't mean you need to go and work 18 hours a day, do loads of mad hours, drink loads of Red Bull. It means that what you've actually got to do is kind of think a bit more agile in terms of the solutions that are presented in front of you. And if you fully adopt and procure your low code platform, you get the feel of it, and you can truly understand kind of that vision behind low code. Yeah. Then that's where I think it becomes a lot more easy to adopt. Yeah. Because I think the first step in kind of, I think that is the first step, really, if I'm completely honest. And it was the first step for me. It was adoption. So you've got to be open and honest to your technology team as to why you're moving in that direction. It's not to discredit their own capabilities. It's because of X, Y, and Z. And it's all about, time to market whilst also maintaining that quality of delivery. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with Aaron. I think he's hit the nail on the head where it's all about the agility for me is, you can have libraries of code and whatever, but actually it tends not to be the programming itself that gets in the way. It tends to be the deployment. It tends to be, all of the stuff that you don't consider as a developer. You kind of go, oh yeah, to code that, it will take me a day. What you're not thinking about is how it's going to get through testing, how it's going to get to live, what's the disruption to the customer, have you updated the documentation? It's all of these tasks that as a developer, you're kind of ignoring, possibly on purpose. And
it's also the supportability after it as well. So as a development team, like an internal development team, once you've got an internal product and once you put it out there, you've also got to support that product. And that's, thinking back to when I was like a junior developer and I was a developer and that's how my mindset was at the time. I was just knocking out features, knocking out new products and putting them out there. I wasn't really thinking about forward in terms of supportability because it kind of didn't really follow me that much. But I think in terms of supportability, this is where it's funny because developers love a blank slate. We love to build something new. One thing we don't really like to do is touch technical debt. And what will end up happening is if you release products, if you build products and release them out there in the market, but you don't have a proper evergreening process behind that product, then in 5 to 10 years time, it's going to be out of date. It's going to be using out of date libraries. There's going to be patches, all of this kind of stuff. And it kind of falls into your continuous delivery strategy. But if you were to outsource that, if you were to make that as part of a managed service from a low code provider, then all of that responsibility, all of that technical debt, which developers don't like, typically anyway, is it's delegated elsewhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think coming back to your original question, Keith, which is kind of the developer outlook on how do they adopt a platform like this, we've kind of very much developed our product with developers in mind because we're a kind of tech first company. And so there have been plenty of examples where we've been building something ourselves or we've worked with a customer who's been building something and they've already done some of it in high code. Yeah. So they've already got a part of it, but it will be something like, okay, now they need to integrate with a legacy system, or now they need to, hook up to Office 365 or whatever it is. Now, I could probably fumble my way through writing some horrifying script that will integrate with the legacy system, or I could probably rewrite an integration with SharePoint that, will take me X amount of time. But actually what we found is a lot of people will get so far in their high code and then they'll use a solution like Toca, which has already got plugins for SharePoint. It's got plugins for Office 365. It's already got all of those connectors. And then they'll just hook into it via API. So Toca's doing the kind of, I don't want to say boring, but it's the kind of tedious, repeatable steps that, you don't as a developer want to have to worry about.
So two things I'd say on that. One is a statement and the other is a question. So the first thing I'd say on it is, often the amount of times when when you're adopting a low-code platform, it's not your entire solution is being built the low-code platform. Nine times out of 10, and definitely the use cases that me and Keith have discussed for my own business, it's hybrid models. Yeah. So it's not like the developer will be sidelined. There's still integration with your internal products, for example. For example, let's say that we wanted to use your Toca platform for a client portal for B2C integration, right? Mm-hmm. You've got your client portal capturing all of that data. Where's it going to go? You don't have access to, you've got many API connectors out the box, but you don't have API connectors to every single product out there on the market, including CRMs or custom built products. So how is it going to integrate? And that's where I think that's where I think developers are missing the trick with low code as well, because it's not a complete replacement of development. It's kind of more of a hybrid working approach, and that's definitely been my experience.
Yeah.
And the question I was going to put forward to you as well, speaking about API connectors, is that one, as I've already said, one of the the biggest advantages to using low code platforms is it's the same advantages as any managed service or SaaS product, is that you as a provider will manage and evergreen the product so that it's always in date and it's always secure and compliant. Given that your products and other, not just yourselves, but other low-code providers have so many connectors out of the box, what is that governance framework? Like, what does that look like with so many API connectors? There's so many things to keep up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's fortunately, it is for us, despite having such a kind of large system, it is mainly the API connectors that are we tend not to worry too much about legacy systems integrations, because they're unlikely to be upgraded with the frequency of a modern REST API. But a lot of the time, yeah, it is basically, it's as boring as it is, it's a monthly audit of, right, has anyone released updates? Has anyone done X, Y, and Z? I mean, most of the time it's fine, because a lot of people will version their APIs. So they'll come out with a new version whilst maintaining backwards compatibility. But you do get the odd occasion where, you give it a test, you see something's been upgraded, and you get a completely different response than you're expecting, which has happened. It is as simple as, we do that work. But I guess that's the benefit of using a platform like this, is that someone else is doing the work for you.
Exactly. If you're making this up, a law firm, and you've got a dozen products all with their own API connectors, that's a lot of supportability for an on-prem team of 20, 50, 100 developers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the last point I'll make on this is that actually where we've seen adoption weirdly has been our back-end developers have been using it to build front-end web applications, because they don't have the web developer skills that they might want to have. They fair enough, they've focused on back-end technologies, but actually having this low-code platform allows them that creative outlet. They can now build these web applications that previously would have been unattainable. I mean, they may still look, they may not win awards for design, but they're functional and they're usable. And I think that's interestingly where we've seen quite a lot of adoption internally, is just
I really do relate to that. I mean, my development background was very much server side, so it was creating APIs, very .NET focused as well. And I've had many ideas over the past, and many ideas that I've started on my own kind of personal GitHub repositories about products and gaps in the market that I could fill, but it comes to that front end piece, and I can only do so many React courses, but because of kind of always gravitated towards server side, it has been challenging, and that's where kind of these low code tools really do come in handy.
So do you see then an opportunity for people to diversify their skills?
100%, and this is something I was going to pick up. Thanks for reminding me. It's not just diversification, but it's also good for career progression as well. So, for example, if I've got a junior developer who joins my team and I need to skill them up, this is a very good starting point for someone who's not who's not had that kind of experience. So using a low-code platform, you still get all of the concepts of development. So API integration, for example. I know in some platforms, I think your own does it as well. You can actually add your custom bits of code in there as well. It's all kind of logical thinking, and that's what it takes to be a developer. So it's good. It's great for junior developers to get their foot in the door with that kind of career framework. But definitely for cross-skilling, 100%.
Yeah.
So do you think then? So taking that the junior developers growing, cross-skilling coming in as well, how important is an ability to have an open source part of the platform to actually build what you need and want to meet that speed and time to market element that you require? And I suppose one of the questions I have around that is, if you're doing that, how does that then relate to the upkeep of those new builds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think having an open source platform, I mean, not all platforms will be open source. Some of them will probably be hybrid. I know a lot of companies that just do bits just to kind of build that community. But the last thing developers want to do is adopt a product and build all of this, and then with a very tight deadline, and then there's an issue with the product and they don't know who to turn to. The support team's not coming back to them, blah blah blah, and all of this. And you want to be able to go and have a look in the code if possible. You want to go and be able to reverse engineer it and maybe even give your feedback as well. But having it open source and having that collaboration, especially for junior developers as well, it's great because you can just bounce ideas back and forth. And if again using the junior developer example, they'll get to log in, look at the code, look at the source code, see how it's structured. And they'll more than likely learn something about coding and how things flow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I mean, just anecdotally, we work with a company in the healthcare sector in the UK, and they have a software provider who basically part of the functionality wasn't working as intended, so they switched it off rather than it produced the wrong results, which, fine. But then they've come back and said, oh, it's going to be 20 months plus until we can actually fix that and upgrade you to a version that will contain that fix. And, that is mega frustrating as a developer, certainly. If you're trying to integrate with something, you've got no idea what's going on. You've just been told, you're looking at around 2 years for this to be fixed. I mean, this is why certainly in our tech team, we adopt open source, massively.
So, okay, then I'm going to be. Go on, Aaron.
So you also have a roadmap as well, I've noticed, and a lot of suppliers tend to have that because, again, it's just that extra visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just also it allows customers also to then challenge and give feedback, which is invaluable to us because we're still quite a young company. And some of the stuff that we add to our roadmap is a little bit of us trying to find what the market might require. And so by allowing people to give feedback on that roadmap, it does help us with our product fit as well.
But then, okay, I'm going to pick up on, I'm going to be, what's the word?
Devil's advocate
here. Because you talked about how you use it in a hybrid model. But with something like a low-code platform, any platform, why, if it has that open extensibility, why would you buy off the shelf and then bespoke rather than building yourself?
Yeah, so okay, well, let me clarify that. I'm not talking about buying off the shelf and then using Toca. I'm talking about products you're already in commercial lock-ins with, or products that you've got which are maybe form part of your technical debt kind of landscape.
So, but I'm just going to throw that out there though. Do you ever see an opportunity where these platforms have become? I'm looking at both of you. I'm looking that way because where these platforms become so integrated and engaged by developers that actually they can build a bespoke, let's say, case management system as quickly as you would if you bought one off the shelf and then rebuilt it, especially if there was this marketplace that had these composable bits that you could drag down. What's your view on that? I have no sort of idea.
So I think there's two things here. One is that it becomes a lot more difficult for a company to become solely low-code orientated if they've got a lot of technical debt behind them. If it's a new company, for example, and you plant that seed early, then they build the foundations on kind of a low-code basis. So one of my, I suppose, predictions for the future is that a lot more startups will be using low code due to costings and convenience. And ideally, I was thinking about this the other day actually, and because of that, I think a good target audience is not just startups, but also capital venture firms as well. As they don't just inject capital, but they also coach and mentor the company. And if they knew the quick returns and advantages like we're talking about now about low code technologies, I'm sure it's something that, I'm sure that's a tactic that would seed in a startup.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's be interesting.
You can have that one for your next sales pitch.
Just write it down. So, looking at the future, then let's take that on. You know, obviously, I've just had a demo by one of our partners who's integrated ChatGPT into Toca platform. I was blown away.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Great.
Yeah, it's crazy. But obviously, you've got things in terms of from a coding world. You've got GitHub Copilot, things like that. Where do you see the world going, I suppose, in terms of like Copilot, low code, no code, whatever. That sort of world in terms of the skill set a developer's going to need going forward, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think first off, just to reiterate what I mentioned then about startups, I think it's going to help startups a lot, because one of the barriers for startups is obviously capital, and you can't go and spend £1 million on a solid team of really expensive developers. When you're a startup, you want to be able to have those advantages of time to fail and time to market. So I think going forward, a lot more, it's going to help a lot more startups get up and running very quickly. So I think we're going to see a massive kind of boom in startups with technology as this becomes a lot more kind of well known.
Yeah.
As for other ideas around kind of low code and stuff like that, I think one thing I've been pondering with and playing around with lately is decentralized applications as well. Speaking about open source, and I think that's definitely
right.
I think blockchain. So I think that's definitely something that I've not seen from a low code platform provider at the moment. But one of my kind of public repositories at the moment is using a kind of an open source ledger for clauses in contracts, for example. It's something I've been toying with for about a year now. So creating an open source clause bank.
Oh, interesting. So it's so basically these clauses are gathered over thousands of contracts that have been produced, effectively using something like ChatGPT
4, for sure, and then
to then surface it and understand which clause fits.
Definitely, and it's immutable because it's on blockchain. You do get issues, especially when you come to kind of the legal sector, as of been made aware of the past couple of months as I've been playing around with this. You've got GDPR, for example. The whole point of blockchain is it's meant to be indestructible, and you can't change or alter, remove your data. You obviously can't have personal information in there, so how does that reflect with GDPR? So there's a bunch of barriers there. It's very immature at the moment, but it's definitely fun to play with.
I think if you look at what's coming out now with ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., there's a massive trend which is basically enabling productivity, right? It's allowing people to move faster. And I very much see low code as part of that trend, that movement, because ChatGPT is, I think we can all agree, it's immensely impressive what it can do, but it could probably tell me the code to write to build an application, but I've still got to, there are still a lot of steps, there's still a lot of barriers in my path. What I see is that all of these tools can start to work really well together to actually allow people, as you've said, Aaron, startups in particular, where it's greenfield development, there's no technical debt, just the amount that it can speed up productivity. Low code is just another tool in that belt. You're saying earlier, we've seen a demo today of ChatGPT integrated with a Toca app, and it was immensely impressive, but you couldn't have built the app without Toca. So it's just another tool, really, and they're all focused on that speed to market, that agility that we've been talking about.
And as a layman, this is a pure layman, one of the things that worries me doesn't worry me at all. I don't lose sleep. But one of the things that I sort of get is if we've got these systems that are generating code off of that everyone else has built, you're going to end up with the same code. Or like, Microsoft have now got it within their PowerPoints, and you say, give me a PowerPoint on X, Y, and Z. It gives a PowerPoint, which is pretty much going to be the same for every person that says that same question. I think might be slightly different because you can put twinges in it, but surely it's going to become it's the concern I have with it, obviously, is are we just going to end up with the same bland applications everywhere, or where's the differentiator with something like chat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly to start with, I think there'll be an over reliance on these tools, and I think you're right. I think there will be a divergence of things, as you said, like adding AI to PowerPoint. I must say, I've never been writing a PowerPoint deck and gone, oh, I wish I had AI at my fingertips. But there are people out there who like it, but you're right. I think we'll reach a point where all of these designs and stuff will diverge. Will kind of they'll reach a point where they're all the same. And I think again, it's a trend, right? We're going to hit peaks and troughs, but it's interesting with Copilot, for example. You're right. I mean, if I ask it to write me a function to fetch the weather, that's going to be the same as it's going to be very similar to everyone else's code. But I don't see that as too much of a problem. I think it's just something that will be a bit of a hype train to start with, and then people will kind of push back a bit and want to go back to actually building custom bespoke things and actually utilizing their own creativity.
What's your thoughts on that, Aaron?
Yeah, I think I've played around with ChatGPT quite a bit, and I think it depends on your input, right? But I've had that same thought, Keith, of isn't it just going to be the same answers over and over again? It gives you a different answer every time, and if your input parameters are different, it'll it's very much a framework, and you provide the parameters, and it's surprisingly how it's quite shocking how different and varied the answers give you. Keep in mind, this product only came out in January.
Yeah.
And there is an over reliance on it at the moment, and I think that's just because people are so excited about the potential use cases.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever logged on to ChatGPT, but 9 times out of 10, I'd say 9 times, maybe 4 or 5 times out of 10, you can't even get access to it because of the bandwidth issues that it's having. I think you can pay for premium, you get extra bandwidth with it, but that just goes to show that the product's still got a lot more road to mature.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, we've got a few questions because we're sort of getting there. Is there any? Well, before I dive into there, is there anything else that you want to cover? I mean, we're hopefully going to run a couple more of these over the next few weeks. So, once we've done the questions, we'll talk about actually other areas we might want to cover and explore. Maybe one of them just talked about quickly there. But let's go to the questions. So first one came from Mr. Smith, Tim Smith. Good to see you, Tim. Thanks for coming on board. Open source will enable security teams to see how the product is secure and have faith that the premise is a strong one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just goes back to that visibility comment that Aaron was making earlier about open source. Is I think so. The developer community nowadays is so kind of reliant on open source, and the fact that you can just go in, see exactly what the packages are. Nowadays, we use Docker extensively in our products, and you can actually go to our Docker and see the vulnerability scans that Docker will do on our images. So you actually can see, okay, well, they've got 3 low alerts for something and nothing else. So that's probably, it's going to be okay. So it's that trust. It's having that openness to the world to say, here's what we provide. And, we're confident that there's nothing sinister. There's nothing untoward hidden inside.
Okay. What do you think about that one? Obviously, Tim, well.
Yes. I don't want to kind of keep reiterating myself on the open source point. I think I've made my stance quite clear on that. The more open source you can give, the more of a community that you build, and the more trust you build with your customers. Right,
got you. I think I've just hit wrong button on Tim's second question. So Tim's second question was, how does the Toca platform perform testing as the end product needs to be tested is there an inbuilt tool that will archive security assurance and functionality testing?
Yeah, so this has been an increasingly common question, I guess, as we've actually encountered some bigger enterprises in our sales cycle. But so we have started to address this. I think originally, possibly a bit naively, we started basically under the ideology that if you want to test something in Toca, you would write something in Toca to test Toca. But I think where that worked all right at the beginning, we quickly realized that that's a lot of overhead for people to be worrying about. It's like, as a developer, I mean, I go through the same problem. I write code, I then have to write my unit tests for that code. But we kind of looked at that and went, can we improve that? So what we've started to introduce is you can basically enter a kind of testing mode.
Yeah. And
what that allows you to do is almost like run through without any side effects where possible. You know, it's still kind of, it's a little bit tricky every now and then, you know, because if I want to test some browser automation, it's difficult to do that without opening the browser. But you know, there are steps we've taken in order to facilitate this, but particularly actually with our apps, and also the development kit that we have in our platform. There is actually sections for unit tests that will run on every kind of release, as it were, of that part. So it means you can say with confidence that, you know, I've updated this block of automation or whatever it is, and I'm now confident that that upgrade hasn't, you know, it hasn't led to any backwards incompatibilities.
Got it. Aaron, got one from you. This is from an anonymous attendee. Most law firms are using Power Apps. What value have you seen using Toca, and why would you recommend law firms, or anyone for that matter, to look at Toca?
So Power Apps is a low-code, no-code provider. So the advantages that you're getting from Power Apps is also the advantages you get from something like Toca as well. So I've used Power Apps myself. I like Power Apps. You've got a big community behind it, being Microsoft. You do. What I've noticed is, though, Power Apps is very expensive. Very expensive, and also it depends on the training modules that are given to you in your kind of commercial SLAs. But I've found that it can be quite expensive to maintain long term. Plus, you've also kind of managed that yourself, though. So even though it's in Microsoft, and even though you know, it's not technically like on-prem, you still own that. You're still responsible for it. But with, you know, going back to the conventional managed service SaaS model, if you were to use Toca, for example, or any provider for that matter, then they'd be responsible for that. Professional service costs as well for Power Apps. It costs quite a bit. In comparison to professional service costs for low-code providers, because I've seen a few. But an actual Power Apps developer can set you back a bit. It depends on your project size.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think we've also had feedback, and take this with a pinch of salt, considering I'm saying it, but that Power Apps, you know, it's great for, you know, that first iteration, that first small version of something. But actually, once you try to do something complex, it runs out of capability in Steam quite quickly. You know, it's great. It has all the kind of basic stuff that you would expect, but as soon as you want to build something that's off the beaten track of one of their templates, or, you know, it's very difficult to actually add. And we've actually heard stories where they've gone to people who have been recommended by Microsoft to go to a high code provider to build what they want because they weren't able to build it in Power Apps. And for me, that's slightly different.
Keep in mind as well, another point is I've been bit by Power Apps a few times with premium connectors. So all of the connectors, they do have a lot of connectors, but some of them are premium, and some of those costs can be overlooked during project planning stages, for example.
Yeah.
And they're not cheap.
So we got a question in from Ben Martin. Based on your experience, for you two, can you quantify roughly the difference time taken to build in a low-code platform, an app in a low-code platform, and that's Toca or another one, or traditional coding methods? Who wants to take that first?
I can take that first. So we've had a few use cases with Toca, haven't we? I mean, we're going through one right now, and I think you've give a lead time on 2 days. So to give a bit of the context around that use case, it's kind of a one-off kind of client a client messaging system, just as a one-off to get a decision from them. Very simple in context, a very simple thing to do. However, given capacity challenges that you typically get within businesses, and the lack of skill sets that you sometimes typically get in businesses when you've not invested enough in that type of technology, you know, we would have had to spend time going out to professional service companies, consultation costs, project management. So, you know, all of these things add up, and you know, I didn't actually put a massive cost model together, or I don't think I costed it up internally, and the reason for that is because I knew straight away it'd be, you know, it would be well quicker out of the box with Toca, because obviously because a lead time of 2 days, it would have took 2 days for me to just reach out to to consultants and get costs from them. And also with Toca, you also get any other provider, you'll get like the kind of solution architect with it as well. You'll get the testing done with them. You'll get the development done with it. You'll get the whole kind of thing overseen and delivered as part of as part of a managed service. So obviously you've got your kind of license costs to go with the provider as well. It's not just, you know, a one-off thing, but with every provider you're going to have to pay for the platform. But then if you wanted to pay maybe professional service costs for that provider as well, and you could do that, but then also kind of incorporate it into your team. So one thing I'm doing at the moment is in the midst of creating my own low-code product team. And this is a great example. So once this product or once this feature is being built, it's going to be demoed internally, and then it's going to be supported by us internally, and little things like that really will kind of shift us more towards low-code development.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not actually, so the time, I mean, I've occasionally taken great pleasure in turning up to a sales call, and there was one particular instance where this guy had been talking about this Python script he had developed to scrape some data, recruitment data from a website, and he said it had taken him 2 weeks. So we built it in 20 minutes on the call on Toca. And so, you know, I'm not saying that's going to be the case for every time, but I mean, there is a reason that these low-code platforms exist, is that time to market is just so much accelerated. But also, it's not just about the time, actually, but it's about the level of individual that can build it. So, I mean, we've got a small professional services team in our company, and it's made up extensively of graduates or people with, you know, 1 or 2 years experience. And, you know, I could bring in engineers, software developers are expensive. You know, there's a massive demand for them, and there's not enough supply, particularly in the UK. The US, a bit different at the moment. But the thing about that is that we've got these graduates basically building things that I would typically give to a senior engineer or a team lead, and you know, maybe it would take 2 or 3 engineers. We've given it to one grad, and he's done it in, even if it's the same time as the engineer, it's cost me half the price, if not less. And so it's kind of a twofold thing there. It's not just the time taken, but it's the cost of the kind of the labor that goes into it.
Okay. Right, we're virtually at time. Aaron, thank you for your time. James, thank you for yours. I've just actually written down, topic for the future that we might have a look at is how to ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, low code, all of these different systems. How's that going to change the professional services world?
Well, that's one for another day.
Be an interesting conversation, that one. look, guys, thanks for coming on the webinar. If you have any sort of topics you want us to delve into and check in, or you want to come on the webinar to join Aaron and James, not so much myself, please let us know. Please send it into keith.sutton@toca.io, and we'll see what we can do.
Is there one last question?
Oh, was there one last question that's coming?
Oh,
no, thank you, Aaron. But finally, to say thank you, Aaron. Hopefully, you agree to come on this in a couple of weeks' time, where we'll take on another juicy topic and see what we can say.
For one of these, we should do a speed run. We'll get a developer on to build an app, and we'll get someone using Toca to build an app, and see who does it first.
Oh, I'm up for that. Speed app test. Aaron, thank you.
Thank you.
And have a good evening, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Cheers, Aaron.
Thanks all.
Bye.